In order to defeat Perpetua and rebirth the universe once again, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are going to need to revisit some of their most defining moments from their collective past. All this and more on the pages of Dark Knight's Death Metal Trinity Crisis issue number 1. Let's hop on in together and find out what happens next, shall we? So, there's been a lot of debate flying around comic book YouTube whether or not death metal is actually a crisis. Well, I think this special one-shot removes all question, as it literally begins with a near omnipotent narrator asking the question, what is a crisis and why do they keep happening so much in the DC universe? Well, a crisis is a moment of great risk and great stakes. It's a moment when heroes from all over the DC universe come together for a greater good, and whoever wins a crisis basically gets to rewrite the universe. And now it would seem that history is repeating itself once again in the DC universe because the heroes of the Justice League find themselves on the precipice of yet another crisis. And hey, despite this being sold as a special one-shot, it is most definitely required reading. In fact, it takes place directly after the events of Death Metal 3. For those who need a refresher, the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman had managed to save the rest of the superhero community from the fire pits of Apokolips, and now they're ready to split up all Scooby-Doo style to deal with the threat. Half the team is going to Perpetua's throne room to try and break her seat of power, quite literally. Go read Justice League if you want to know what's going on there. And as far as the main characters we've been following, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, as well as Harley Quinn and Swamp Thing, they're going to try and sneak into the Batman Who Laughs castle, all in an attempt to get themselves closer to the Dark Multiverse, in particular 3 planets, hence known as the Crisis Worlds. 3 individual worlds created by the Batman Who Laughs in an attempt to reap crisis energy for his master Perpetua in a place wherein these crises that we know so well play out over and over again. Jarro, the Justice League's own personal piece of Starro the Conqueror and new best friend, is going to provide psychic cover for everyone with the help of a brand new psychic amplifier, which yes, looks like another big jar. And again, if you're this far into death metal and you're still doubting whether or not Scott Snyder is basically writing one giant comedy story, then the silly jar should certainly be enough to change your mind. But it's actually the next part I love more, wherein Jarro actively makes fun of Jonah Hex for wearing a Confederate soldier's uniform and wonders, hey, why is this guy on our team again? Getting into Castle Bat is not going to be easy. There's dozens of other multiversal Batman running around. In fact, the Grim Knight makes a reappearance in this issue. Isn't that fun? It's here the members of the Trinity start drawing straws to see who the selflessly heroic one is ultimately going to be. We're also reminded that Superman is still himself being overloaded with Darkseidiness following his own run-ins with the forces of Apokolips and Darkfather in the previous issue. It's Swamp Thing who actually steps on up and decides to risk everything for everyone's benefit. The way he sees it, the green and all plant life is dying on Earth anyway, so he might as well just take whatever's left into himself and get all supercharged. In fact, when Swampy finally does achieve his 100% final Ultra Instinct form, it comes complete with horns and grassy angel wings. Hey, kinda like how he looked in Scott Snyder's New 52 run. Actually, wait, come to think of it, is that why Scott Snyder is focusing so heavily on Swamp Thing in this story? Because it's all part of bringing together his previous work into one big super work? That's kinda cool, actually. Our heroes manage to breach the gates of Castle Bat, but unfortunately inside there's even more evil Batman, all with even more fun and creative names. There's Ark, a character who is literally just an amalgamation of all of the most famous inmates in Arkham Asylum. Black Monday, who is basically just Solomon Grundy but more Batman-y. He even keeps the whole rhyming scheme, which I quite enjoyed. Cull, a female Batwoman who fights like an Amazon because she is a multiversal daughter of the Bruce Wayne and Diana of her Earth. And another Batman who isn't a Batman at all, but actually a holographic projection of Martha Wayne. Again, these are the jokes, people. But hey, death metal is a lot more than just silly Silver Age super comedy and a dark and gritty rapper. Oh no, we've got some metatext we gotta deal with. You see, in the next room, the Trinity actually come face to face with the last person they expected, Barbatos, the evil god who kicked off the original death metal and was formerly the Batman Who Laughs master.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Ah yes, here we go again, or at least I thought here we go again. The Leaguers start reading Barbatos the Riot Act, saying how this is all his fault, but in a surprising twist, he turns the conversation on them. Barbatos talks about how crises just don't happen, that they are direct responses from the universe against the heroes themselves and their inability to keep hope alive. And that when all hope is lost and everything sinks into a deep, twisted darkness, a crisis is not far behind. Basically, Barbatos is saying your favorite comic books keep getting rebooted because the heroes of the DC universe aren't doing their jobs by being hopeful and keeping you entertained and keeping you interested, and really the bigger problem behind that is the writers. Wow, did Scott Snyder via Barbatos just put the entire post-DC Rebirth era of DC Comics on blast? Because I think he did. The plan is for the Trinity to go into each of the individual crisis worlds, set right what once went wrong, and make ready for Wally West to absorb the excess crisis energy in Battle Perpetua. Swamp Thing, Jonah Hex, and Harley Quinn are going to stay behind as a kind of physical anchor to make sure the Trinity can find their way back to their original universe when all of this is done with. We actually get a fairly sweet and well put together little scene wherein Harley isn't sure that she can do such an important job. After all, she never gets invited to big crisis crossover events like this, but Jonah says she'll do fine. Again, you gotta love the whole metatext gag that Harley the character is unaware of how popular she's actually become outside the comics until right now. Unfortunately for them, they all come under attack by the Darkest Knight's legbreaker, the Robin King, and he's come complete with a utility belt filled with something for each of them. Perhaps the real horror of the Robin King is that no one actually expects a little kid to be as competent as he ultimately is. Now back with the Trinity, they get split up at the portal and each end up getting sent to a different crisis. For Batman, it's the original crisis on Infinite Earths, but wait, it looks like the Earth has already been destroyed. And the Anti-Monitor doesn't look like his regular armored self. In fact, he looks like a tiny little gray Martian, which makes sense given what we know with him being a child of Perpetua. Things get similarly weird for Superman over in Final Crisis. Darkseid is still alive and kicking, and it actually looks like he has become a Superman now? Obviously, this raises all sorts of questions that only Wonder Woman ends up getting an answer to, from Superboy Prime of all people, who says that, yeah, here on the Crisis worlds, the bad guys win. And it's on that disheartening note right there the comic comes to a close, everybody. And so that was Dark Knight's Death Metal Infinity Crisis issue number 1, and you know what, I'm thinking these big, long, mouthful titles are also part of the joke. This was another fun madcap adventure type of story, helped out a lot by the meta storytelling that Snyder is employing right here, especially what seems to be his own views on crises and how DC Comics is basically addicted to them, doing one every 8 to 10 years. The big theme of hope is brought up again, an idea that pervaded all throughout DC Rebirth. And how when the hope is gone and things get too grim and gritty, a crisis is soon to follow. I find this interesting because Death Metal on the outside looks like just that type of grim and gritty type of story. And yet, if you actually read it, it's filled with comedy and slapstick and surprisingly sweet moments with characters that don't often get that much of it. I know some people are probably already rolling their eyes at another big DC story that's about stories and about continuity and history and everything else, and how DC has even managed to tap the well dry on that sort of meta storytelling, but for what it's worth, I thought it was a good version of that type of story, and I'm still enjoying it. I would give this one another 8 out of 10. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.